Hey all you action figure enthusiasts out there, JC here with another T&I video. And today's video is kind of a special one. I recently got a chance to sit down and talk with the legend himself, Todd McFarlane, the founder of McFarlane Toys, co-founder of Image Comics, just legendary comic book artist in general. And we talked about everything from the newly announced DC Multiverse line that they're going to be doing this year, as well as other action figure lines that they're working on: Mortal Kombat, One Punch, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and of course Spawn. It wouldn't be a Todd McFarlane interview if we didn't talk about Spawn. So we get an update from him on the movie as well as action figures. So it is a long one. Definitely it is a long one, and I really want to thank Mr. McFarlane for sitting down with me and spending so much time talking to me about all this stuff. I was only expecting a 15-minute interview, and it turned into 90 minutes. So I really do appreciate that he took the time and spoke with me, so that essentially he could speak with you guys as well. And so I do hope you enjoy it, and let's just jump into it. Hey Todd, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us about your biggest reveal, DC Comics, as well as your other product lines.
Well, let me say I appreciate you having me on today. The thing that I enjoy a lot is being able to try and interact with the fans as much as possible. And I know that good people like you, that have podcasts or go out there and write blogs or whatever, are sort of channeling towards the fan base, because at the end of the day, any of us who have been lucky enough to have a career in the entertainment arts world, we're really at the mercy of the fans. And so I try not to forget at any time that the fan is basically everything.
I agree with you 100% about the fans and how important they are. So let's go on and jump into it and start talking about the thing that's on all those fans' minds, and that's your new DC Multiverse line of action figures. And I noticed in your initial batch of reveals, right off the bat, you're already doing figures for the Batman animated series and the CW Arrow series. I assume we probably will see more CW stuff down the line, but do you have plans to do other properties like from the DC Universe streaming service, the Teen Titans, or older movies that, like the Kristen Bale movies, or even like Christopher Reeve's Superman or something along those
Yeah,
lines?
I think there's going to be a balancing act here of, at least initially, and let me just say at the end, the fans are basically going to be voting with their dollars. They're going to pretty much be telling us what they want, and so we'll try and accommodate that as much as possible. I think there's a chance to do not only what's sort of new and modern and what people know now, but then, like you're saying, go back in time just a little bit to have a little bit of fun with it, even if we went all the way back to the George Reeves Superman. But as you know, the further you go back in time, then you start leaving people sort of on the curb because they don't remember it, they don't have an affinity for it, they don't know what it is. You may execute it very well, and it may be spectacular. I'm sure you've seen dozens and dozens of these types of toys, but the retroness of it has sort of made it a little bit sort of outdated to, maybe somebody in the 15 to 25-year-old range. So we got to be a little bit careful as to what our selection is going to be with any of those characters. And again, how we're going to pick it is really going to be like what we get a sense, and Warner Brothers is going to give us all their data of what's popular. If people say that they want, Teen Titan figures, and we'll give it to them, right? But if they say, no, we love Teen Titans, but it's more the comic book versions of them, then we'll give comic book version looks of them instead. Or if they say, no, we want Teen Titans animation, with a goofy little look, then we'll give them that, right? So we'll be having our ear as close to the ground as possible to see what the fans are telling us once all this stuff comes out, because the voting will begin the moment the first toys are released. Everybody's going to say, why aren't you doing that guy? Why aren't you doing that gal? How come you didn't do this? How come you? and we'll just keep cobbling all that information.
Now, another question that's come up a lot is back when we like talked to you at Toy Fair, you had mentioned when we were talking about scales and stuff that you could probably do various scales, and obviously 7-inch scale seems to be your go-to scale these days with your action figures. So I assume that's why you started out with the scale, but are you open to doing other scales besides 7-inch, like 6-inch or even 4-inch or 12-inch articulated figures, or do you think you're pretty much going to stick with the 7-inch scale?
My guess would be that if we were going to go outside that initially, it probably would be to go bigger, so that we could actually do some, super cool detail and whatever else. What happened was Mattel had the license, and Mattel had sort of this all-encompassing license, which was sort of mainstream and collectibles, if you will, right? And what they did is they sort of cut that license in half. So now you have, I think it's Spin Master that has the sort of the mainstream look.
Yeah.
And then I've got the collectible end of it. I think, again, although I don't really pay attention to everybody's other company, I think the scale of Spin Master is going to be slightly smaller, and I don't think Warner Brothers wants, two of them to look sort of the same, being next to each other, that may be different characters and or different detail and or different price points, given that unlike, when we did Fortnite, where we weren't able to sell next to the master toy license, if you will, we can't. And so everybody's being cognizant of not basically doing something that looked like the other guy's product, right? And Spin Master doesn't want to do something that looks like mine anymore, and I want to do something that looks like theirs. What we want to do is give choice, and then let the consumer decide and pick whatever it is, right? And part of the choice is scale, as well as sort of price and characters.
Well, I know like Spin Master is doing a 6-inch scale line, but they're, like you say, they're really made more for the younger kids, not the collector. And I guess where a lot of the collectors are coming from is they do collect other 6-inch lines, like, well, we won't mention a competitor line, but one that's very popular, Marvel Legends. And really, we're looking forward to having it be kind of in scale with those. There certainly are 7-inch scale collectors out there, so I'm not to say that there aren't, but that was really kind of, if there was, one of the things that I heard a lot the most from our viewers and stuff was that they were hoping that they might be in scale with the Marvel, so they could put the Marvel and the DC stuff on their shelves together.
Yeah, the thinking was more of not worrying about the scale of Marvel versus DC. It was more of worrying about whether a Batman fan would buy it. Right, so you've seen, and I've seen them dozens of times. You walk into somebody's room, they got this cool shelf, and they happen to like Batman, whoever, but take any character, right? And they've got 50 iterations of Batman on their shelf, everything from 1 inch to 20 inches, right? I mean, all different size, scale, shapes, articulation, price point, all of it. But what all of it says is, I like Batman. Right? Oh my God, I like Batman. I like Batman. I like Batman. And so, to me, I'd rather do stuff that may appeal to a Batman fan, a specific character fan, than worrying whether it cross-pollinates with a competitive product that's out in the marketplace.
Another question while we're talking scale. So one of the sublines, I guess it's kind of a subline, because as I understand it, you're breaking it down. It's all multiverse, but you've got kind of your Batman assortments, and then you have your non-Batman assortments. But then within like the Batman assortment, we have a subline that has Build-A-Batmobile pieces in it. And of course, with the comic book figures, one of the traditional things that we often see with them are like Build-A pieces. Right. Do you have more plans to do either vehicles or Build-A figures, like is traditionally done, like both Mattel and
yeah. So here's the thinking on that is that I'm, as a collector myself, I did it. I think I mean, obviously I've owned, multiple companies over the years, and I'm always trying to get into the head of the consumer of trying to say, let's not take advantage of them. Let's not try and squeeze every nickel we can out of them. The downside to me of the build-a-figure mentality is that you have to then buy, and it usually was traditionally 5 or 6 figures, so let's just stay with 6. You have to buy 6 figures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been making toys for a long time, and I know that once you get past like the top 3 on any line, you're already starting to sort of go into, I put characters, and we used to do it with sports too. We used to have the A bucket, the B bucket, and C bucket.
Right.
And usually what would happen, we do a 6-figure line in sports. We'd take 2A, which is usually all-stars, and then 2B, which are really good players, and then 2Cs, and we'd mix and match them so that we had a balance in, because if you just did nothing but the all-star, by series 4, you're out. And now you have to basically start doing whole lines of the B characters, and that's not going to be nearly as strong. So I've always thought that the way for longevity, the way to keep it stretched out is that you sort of mix and match sort of between the A+ characters and those that maybe don't sort of reach that level. So to ask somebody to buy 6, you're already asking them probably to buy 2 or 3 figures that they normally probably wouldn't, just so they could get the piece, so they can put together the 7th figure, which is your Build-A-Figure. You also run into the fact that a lot of times the Build-A-Figure, from my perspective, were not really super strong characters, because you don't want to take the strong characters and not sell the heck out of them, right? So would a Batman Who Laughs Build-A-Figure work? Of course it would, right? But you also have to say, hey, if we just did the figure built and put it in the package, we sell a bunch of those too, right? So you start having these conversations of, do you want to sacrifice a good character to build it? And so what ends up happening is a lot of times the answer is no. And I'm saying, just from what I've seen over the years of competitors, that then you're asking people to buy 6 figures so that you can put together a figure that, to me, is a lot of times I would put that character in the C bucket, right? It's not even a B character. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. So what we came up with, we go, well, can we get them, instead of buy 6, can we get them to buy 3? Let's cut it in half. So we're not asking them to spend so much money. Let's get them to buy 3, and then instead of doing a figure, because all it would have to be is then a top, middle, and bottom, and it would be sort of weird. Let's put a figure in there. Now, what kind of figure can we put in there? There have been dozens and dozens of looks of Batmobiles over the course of this character's existence. So in my brain, I'm going, I could do Batmobiles forever almost, and never have to ever even come close to repeating them. And so that was really sort of the main thought, that the first Batmobile looks cool. The second one, which we've already designed and done all the engineering on, to me looks even cooler. And then we'll just see whether the fans respond to it and say, oh yeah, I want more of those vehicles. Let me tell you that when you have one of the vehicles by itself, it might not make quite as much sense. But I'm telling you, by the time you put the second one next to it, your brain starts to say, oh, if I had 6 of these on my shelf, all Batmobiles from different eras, different styles, different movies, that would be pretty cool looking. And so we're going to see, because we'll do a couple versions of vehicles, and then we'll just see whether people want more vehicles, whether they want, to your point, a figure. Or whether we've even talked about that you build, maybe that your 3 pieces then are like the computer deck where Batman would sit in the Batcave.
Batcave, yeah,
like
that would be cool.
Or whatever, some you build a prop that has some kind of meaning, or some little mini diorama so that you can put your character in there or something.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Now, with the figures, though, like one of the advantages of the Build-A-Figure was it allowed companies to do the bigger characters that might not fit on a normal card back. So like say a Bane, do you have a plan if you're going to do those larger characters? If you're not going to do them as Build-A-Figures, will you be able to release large characters like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, here's the difference between my company and some of those other. I'm not a public company, right? So I'm not squeezing every single penny for profits like they do, which is, they have shareholders, and that's what they have to do. They have what they call a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits. I don't have to. So can we put a Bane in the package and make them way bigger than Superman and Batman? Yep. Will it cost me more to make them? Yeah. Will I make less profit? Yeah. Will it still be cool? And am I going to make it? Yep. Right. So this is the upside of being a public or a private company. I can just at times have fun and not be a slave to dollars all the time. As a matter of fact, right before this call, we were working on one of those big characters, and my comment to the sculptor who is here at my office was, he's not big enough, right? Like, I need him, like, I know you made him bigger, but I need him even bigger than that, right? And so now the conversation ended up being, I had to go to the packaging department to say, how big is the package that we're allowed to have at Walmart and Target? And because I'm a bit of a slave to that, because they all the boxes have to be uniform. So, but what's the biggest I can make this guy and him still fit in the box? Because if I can do a cool big, I mean, I don't know how much you followed my company's exploits over the years, but we used to do with the Spawn toys, these really big, fat, chunky guys, right?
Right.
I can tell you from a sales point of view, I never had a toy that was big and fat and chunky, that had a lot of plastic, ever back up in sales, right? They always sold, because people go, what? I can get twice as much plastic for the same price as that figure right next to it? I'm taking the plastic, right? Big figures are cool. They look cool, and they're good value, so you can always sell them. So.
Well, I think you're dead on. If you can deliver the large characters without making people have to buy 6 figures, maybe 3 of which they don't even really want, I think that's awesome to hear. So I think that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, well, again, I get like, Solomon Grundy, because, look at, Solomon Grundy or somebody like that, not the most interesting character, right? But if you make them big, they become more interesting to look at, I think, right? And if you can give them a little bit of body language and whatever else. And I think, characters like Bane fall into that. And there's probably, 10, 12 characters right now, top of my head, that DC and the DC Multiverse have that I think would fall into that I want them to be noticeably bigger than the heroes, right? And way bigger than the female. Right, so that you put the two of them together and you go, oh my gosh, look at that.
Next one I wanted to bring too is, so I don't want to. We've talked about, you and I've talked about in the past about articulation, and I know you as an artist, you put the overall look of the figure above posability, and whenever you can, you try and hide the articulation as much as possible, and I think you do a great job with that overall. But there are some times where you have a very agile type character, and maybe it's not so easy to hide all the articulation. I just wanted to pick your brain on when you're sitting there weighing between the overall look and the mobility of the figure, how hard is that for you to balance that and come up with a figure that not only looks good, what's the thought process that you go through when you're making the determination?
Well, let me tell you, I've lost that fight. because again, if you're asking me, hey Todd, make a toy for yourself, I'm gonna have less articulation and more art. It's just how I'm wired, right? But again, we're trying to sell product, and I know that there is a big portion of people who collect them that want to put them in cool poses or make little mini films or do something, right? Because right. I mean, again, to me, there's there's sort of two figures that have a lot of articulation. There's the ones, and you've seen them, that they have lots of articulation, but man, you can put them in some really cool poses, right? Especially if they're holding like a gun or something like that. Some of the video game ones, I thought even, some of the stuff we did with Halo, that there was a lot of movement in it. You could do these really cool poses with them. And because they were in armor, it still all worked. No matter what you did, it still all worked. And none of it looked sort of funky. The ones that get a little bit goofy for me, the aesthetics get broke a little bit for me, are the ones where they're in skin tight uniforms. And then you go, oh, I want to do super articulation on somebody that's skin tight. And especially if it's like a female figure, so that now the arms are even like a little bit skinnier. So there's nothing to hide any of their articulation. So you can get them into cool poses, but if they're not doing that and you just have them on the shelf and they're just standing there, they don't look, I think, as pretty in the package. And here's where it gets a little bit tough, because looking at the package is, don't judge the book by the cover. Of course we do. We're going to completely judge these toys by what we see in the package. And nobody's going to say, hey, once I get it out, I want it to go into some cool poses. And then some of the, these figures that, the shoulders look a little bit broad, but as soon as you go up, they move in, right? Some of the articulation actually moves in. It looks really good. So it doesn't really look good if their shoulders are down like this, but it looks good if they're in some kind of constant motion. But if you can't see it in the package because they're just in the sandwich pose, or flat board pose, and it looks a little awkward, you may actually lose a sale to the average person who's just going, it's not as pretty as I thought it was going to be. So I don't know. Right now we're in our trying to do as much articulation as we can with the figures. We started it with what we did with some of the Fortnite figures, and then try to carry, as much of that over to the DC Multiverse. And so we'll see. My guess is people will appreciate the range of motion that's in the characters. I may, from time to time, because we've already started running into it, there are certain people that have certain padding and stuff on the shoulder that to get articulation, you have to now sort of destroy a little bit of the costume, right? And so that's the one where I'm going to go, do I do the shoulder pads correct and have less range of motion, or do I basically do a bastard version of the shoulders, but I can now get the arm all the way up here? So, and we'll probably do a little bit of both, and then we'll just sit back and we'll let the fans sort of tell us which one of the two they thought was sort of the smarter decision.
Yeah, like on the Batman figure, why I think it looks awesome. My only minor concern I had with that one is that, like, you had the cape coming over the shoulder, which looked like might limit some of that shoulder movement there on that one. But
yeah, it definitely will, which is one of the reasons why the cape is, such soft rubber, right? We're actually even trying to play with, is there a way to articulate the cape here, so that when the arm goes up, the cape actually folds with it, right? Trying to see if we can solve some of these issues, because here's the problem with it is, once you say you want to clear the shoulders, and these are all sort of silly artistic conversations you have, once you say you need to clear the shoulders so that they can do this, which is a great move, right? And for the articulation like it means then that everybody with a cape, and Batman is a good example, although luckily there's not as many people with capes as you might think there are, just that a couple of the big ones, especially the biggest guy, does have a cape. And when you take Batman, to my mind's eye, when you take Batman and you take it like this, and then you go, oh, I can't go over the shoulder, so I have to go straight back.
Right.
It reminds me when I was a kid and I used to take a towel and I used to tie it around my neck, and I used to be, a superhero, right? Because it goes straight back and it doesn't look imposing. Like, the thing about Batman, when you look at a lot of the artwork of him, especially in the comic book, what's cool about him is he just gets these cool, big, broad shoulders, and he becomes almost a shape, right? And you're going, oh my God, that looks super cool, right? What Sean Gordon Murphy did in his comic book, or what Greg Capullo did in his comic book, or whatever. But to get that as a toy that looks cool on the shelf is one thing. What you then run into is, oh, that big bulky cape, to your point, hinders a little bit of the movement. So what do? Do you go for that cool shape on the shelf, or do you go that I need a Batman that basically can move a lot? And the answer is, I think, that I've got a 3-year license, and we'll see what happens after that, whether everybody sort of likes what we're doing and DC likes us, Warner Brothers, is probably do a little bit of both, right? So we'll do the ones that sort of look cooler, because it can go across the shoulders here and it looks pretty cool. And then we'll do ones that basically give them a little bit more freedom, and maybe if I balance it, to using your word, maybe we can sell both, or maybe we find that the crowd says, oh no, I like the aesthetic more than I like the motion. They're going to tell us. They're going to tell us, right? And then we'll just dictate what the fans want, the majority of the fans want, and do it as artistically as good as we can.
One other question I had on the articulation. I noticed on the Superman figure, which again is an amazing looking figure. I love what you did with the S symbol on his chest, the way it looks on there with the metallic red and everything.
It's big. I like big logos.
Well, one thing I didn't know, well, one question I had, which I can't tell from the images you guys released, is will he be able to look back for flight type poses with his neck? And then also I noticed that one seems like is using single hinged elbows as opposed to double hinged elbows like the Batman and stuff. And I was wondering if there was a reason for going that route on him or not.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting. Good question, because sometimes it's an engineering reason, and sometimes it's like a thickness, depending on how thick it is. Like you got something that's really thick with 2 hinges, it starts to come and look a little chunky.
Uh-huh.
And I think we made Superman a little more buff than we made Batman. So we decided that, well, let's try one version on Superman, one version on Batman. Again, sit back, see if people like one more than the other. But sometimes it's just your sculpting, and when you go to cut it, although we could have done a double hinge in the elbow, I thought it would have distorted sort of the look of his arm just a little bit, and I go, you know what? I want the first Superman to be a little elegant looking, a little more regal in the package instead of, getting there. I mean, I think once we get our footing and people know what we're doing, both good and bad, whatever else, then we'll be able to experiment a little bit more. I've had these conversations with Warner Brothers already, and we're in our walking phase, if you will, and I've already talked about jogging and running with some of these ideas, and I think we'll get there. I think we'll get there, and then as we do each one of those, and again, we'll get the feedback and people will tell us. But that was really it. To your point, I don't have it in front of me. I don't think the head goes back completely, so he can look like he's flying like flat on a bed. But we do have a flight stand that you can put him on, and that he sort of bends and his head does come up, so he can get into a pretty cool flying pose, right? It might not be, completely parallel to the ground per se. But they'll still look pretty good.
Now, were you under like a time crunch for this first wave? It seems like a line like this, I mean, you got the license, like I said, basically a year ago, and you're already, as I understand it, the stuff's about to hit market any day. So is that a normal time period to get an action figure line from scratch to design to market, or was just because this particular wave, the way it fell and everything was?
Sometimes you go and get deals. I mean, I've done hundreds of contracts now, and in my 25 years, I think, this is our 26th year doing toys. Sometimes, you get into the game a little bit late. Sometimes you don't, and then, you negotiate the contract for 3 months, so that makes you late. So I mean, it would have been nice for everybody, Warner Brothers and us involved, to maybe have had another month or two. But to me, it was a little bit important to say, hey, it's the dawn of of a new license. You know, you got Spin Master, you've got McFarlane Toys doing the figures, and you know, trying to get them as close to the new year as possible. So you can start getting, like I said, that reaction, that feedback, so that you can start to modify your toys and start to, you know, move it in the direction that we want it to. So everybody, you know, I think making toys sort of like making movies and music and whatever else. Everybody would making comic books. Everybody would always love to have an extra week, right? So, but you know, within the constraints of what we had, you do the best you can. So.
And you say you have the current license for 3 years. Do you have an idea of like how many waves of DC figures approximately that we can expect a year, or?
Not really. And here's why I say that. And probably if you went to talk to Spin Master, they would be able to articulate it more than I would. And here's why. Because you know, when you're a master toy license, you're selling it like Target and Walmart, the bulk of your sales are going to be at the big box stores, right? That's what you're built for. That's what you're doing. You know, we have these accounts like Walgreens and GameStop and these sort of eclectic places, Amazon and these other places. We're going to, you know, maybe even do some direct to consumer stuff. And all of those are places where the consumer is slightly different, the demographic, right? Where in the big box stores, you have a lot of youth walking up and down those aisles, and then you have their mom and dad, and then you have obviously the collectors. But when you go into like a GameStop, you can do a different character, right? That you might not be able to sell at Walmart or something like that, because there you want to keep the names of the characters, I think, mostly fairly recognizable, right? Or at least iterations of characters that are recognizable. So if you were to do, you know, Ninja Superman, I'm making it up, at least it's still Superman, right? And moms and dads and kids understand the word Superman. Once you go into some of the other places, then you can start to become a little more eclectic in some of the characters and some of the designs. Some of the things you can think about. And so depending upon what that hunger is for some of that eclecticness will then ultimately sort of be the rhythm of how many toys that we put out in a year. So I don't say it because we don't know. Right now, we're still trying to see what's the demand and where is that demand, and what particular looks do they want with those demands. And so we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out on the fly. Yeah. But again, to start with, it'd be, you know, probably at least 3 waves in a year.
Okay. Now, obviously, you know, your big characters are the ones that the big box retailers like Superman, Batman, they want to carry because they're the most recognizable to everybody. But do you have plans to go much deeper into the DC library to do those more obscure characters? And also kind of on par with that, since we often see the lesser known characters kind of released this way, will we be seeing like store exclusives with this line? I don't think anything's been announced as a store exclusive as of yet. But
so because we're on, you know, we're licensed and are sort of the collector piece of that puzzle as compared to the mainstream. My guess is that once you get into some of the characters a little bit deeper, a little bit more obscure, I don't want to say obscure, that I wouldn't rate as like A+ characters. We probably are going to be the ones that are probably going to get most of those to marketplace first, because we'll have outlets. I think that will be more conducive for collectors to go to instead of the big box stores. So could we do Dr. Fate or the Spectre or one of the cool characters from the Metal comic book series, or, you know, the White Knights or something like that? Yeah, and I think we're more suited to be able to actually sort of capture some of those styles and put them out in the marketplace and see whether there's a hunger for, you know, something beyond, you know, the classic JLA sort of lineup, if you will.
I could sit here and talk all day about DC, but have gotten some questions about a couple of the other action figure lines that you've been doing. So I figure we're probably getting pretty close to our time limit here. So if you don't mind switching gears a little bit, so you just recently announced 2 additional figures for your Mortal Kombat line with the Raiden and Johnny Cage figures. And basically what I was interested in knowing is, do you plan on going deep into the Mortal Kombat library, or are we kind of winding down with Mortal Kombat? And then also I was just curious, does your license allow you to do figures based on the older games, or are you only limited to doing Mortal Kombat 11 figures?
Now we have pretty good flexibility. So to answer your initial question, we'll make as many Mortal Kombat figures as people are willing to buy, right? I mean, and that answer really is for almost any line of anything we've ever done. People go, oh, how many are you going to do? And it's like, I don't know. The audience is going to tell us, right? If they don't buy the first line, they're probably not going to buy the second line, right? So if they buy the first line and they say, oh my gosh, why don't you do this character and this character? Then we'll make more. And sometimes more is, 2, 3, 4 series, and sometimes it could be 8 series long. It just depends on each brand, and again, how deep their characters are. Because look, if I'm going to do toys from the Halloween series of movies, right? There's really sort of one character in it, right? Mike Myers, the guy with the mask. That's it. You're done, right? I guess maybe you could push it and you could do Jamie Lee Curtis, but that's sort of it. You're sort of okay after 2, right? And then there's other things, obviously things like Star Wars and DC Multiverse and Marvel, where they're hundreds of characters deep, right? And there's lots of video games that sort of fall into that category. I mean, when we did Halo, I mean, we did dozens and dozens and dozens of looks of that video game because they had them, and there was a hunger for them. So Mortal Kombat has this pretty good deep bench of characters, and they've also have longevity of being around. So even the character themselves have evolved over the decade. So there's 2 ways you can go. You can go character wise, and then you can just go character look wise, which is sort of deep the other way. So I think they're turning out cool. I mean, every time I see a prototype of from the factory that's unpainted, I just go, man, look at all that cool detail. I mean, this is it feels like old school McFarlane Toys because they have so much stuff on them. So I'm hoping they sell, so that we can keep doing them, because I think they look good on a shelf.
And you can actually do like looks of the characters, like we got Sub-Zero and Scorpion from 11, but you could, if you wanted to, you could do like from Mortal Kombat 1, you could do a Scorpion and a Sub-Zero.
Yeah, we've had those. Again, I mean, everything has to get approved. We have those talk, but like anything else, everybody wants their current stuff to be out in the marketplace because that's what they're spending their money on and that's what they're marketing, right? So it makes complete sense. I mean, whatever the hottest movie is that Warner Brothers is launching, they're going to want, everybody that's making figures to have some of that out in the marketplace to help back it up. And although so it just puts everything in a queue. And the Mortal Kombat people have been pretty wide open, and again, the game looks the best right now currently, right? I mean, it's like any video games, right? The technology has just gotten crazier and way better and more realistic. So as we go back, then we would be having a little bit of fun if we went back to some of the early iterations of the game. So, but that would be cool because, again, just from a collector point of view, those would also be cool. But for now, I think they want us to get some of the main new stuff out of the way, and then we can have a conversation of, if it succeeded, how do we keep going? How do we keep going? So.
And do you think like chances, I mean, obviously, I know you don't want to confirm anything that hasn't been announced, but based on the sales of the Sub-Zero and the and the Scorpion, and you've got the two up for pre-order that are up for pre-order now, the Johnny Cage and Raiden. Do you think there's a pretty good chance we'll continue to see more after those two, or?
I hope. I like, again, we've got, we have some of the reference, and we've begun sculpting some, making an assumption that we're going to keep going. So then what ends up happening, you can get ahead of yourself in terms of the research and development, and then you have to start reading sales data of the previous line or two to see whether it's going to keep going, right? Because if they sell, then it's easy for me to walk in and continue to tell my retailers that they should be buying more, right? And if not, then usually the retailers phone me and say, "Hey, I don't want this anymore. It's not selling," and they just move on. They go, "What else do you have? Right? What else do you have? It's not selling at the rate we want." So they're very scientific about what they think works and what doesn't work, which is why sometimes you need to find outlets that are outside of those sort of formulas, so that you're not at the mercy of public companies and whatever their matrix are. Sometimes you can go, especially with the internet, find other outlets and just say, fine, if they don't want it, but I think we can still sell 8 or 10,000 of these. We just go direct to the consumer, or go through this little smaller channel here and let everybody know we're making this figure that they can't get anyplace else other than here.
Now, another new video game license you just announced was the Cyberpunk 2077. You're doing 2 figures from that. But a question that's come up is the company behind that, the Project Red, CD Project Red, is also involved in another pretty popular property, The Witcher, which has the new show on Netflix. Any chance you might be going after that license too, or?
Yeah. I mean, again, the answer is yes. Whenever anything is popular, our radars usually go up, right? We usually have conversations all the time, usually every Monday, every other Monday, of like what's out in the marketplace that seems to be bubbling up. Doesn't mean we get it. Doesn't mean that they want us to do it, but at least we do our list of popular, and then we sort of say, hey, where do we think we can sell this? And by the time we get it out in a year, do we think that property is still going to be popular, right? I mean, because you can get to a party a little bit late with some of the licenses that you're doing. So the answer is yeah, but right now we're gonna see what the result is of Cyberpunk, because again, that's one of those ones that seems to be bubbling a little bit bigger every time you sort of see it, and so hopefully it'll translate into some ancillary sales, and we're part of that right now. So.
Cool. But no, nothing you want to announce today about a Witcher license, right?
Yeah, I can't. So.
Okay, fair enough. Last couple questions, just to get a couple updates on a couple other properties you've done work on. So, are we going to be seeing more Game of Thrones? I know the show's over now. You got the one wave and then like an exclusive, but we really haven't seen much more from that property. Do you have any more plans for Game?
Yeah, we've got a couple that we're working on right now, just trying to find the distribution that's there, because again, there's some brands that, because of the biorhythm of how they come out, whether that's a movie or streaming TV or something like that sometimes they bubble up hard, and then everybody wants it, and then sort of they move to the next thing that bubbles up. So obviously when Game of Thrones was on the air, and it was couldn't hardly go to a website where they didn't have one article, then it's easy to put that product in there. And then when it sort of moves on, then they're like, well, okay, Todd, it's not the hottest thing. Oh, there's this new hot show. Why don't you go get that license? So you're constantly having this conversation saying, no, I think that there's plenty of character within the confine of the mythology of Game of Thrones that could go for a long time. Again, this is that stuff that I keep saying, where if the stores don't get it, there's now ways to still do these toys and get a little bit more straight line between the demand of the consumer and us making it, and just say, hey, you know what, You got to either come to our website, you got to go to this website, you got to go to Kickstarter, whatever. I'm just making it up. Any of these places that if we have to just go, this toy is cool, and if we don't do it this way, the big stores just are not going to buy enough to make it work. So let's just do it ourselves, right? Let's just, come on, let's make this work ourselves.
And on the same token, Harry Potter, I assume maybe you're waiting till the next Fantastic Beast movie to do more Harry Potter, or you have more on top?
Yeah, no. I was just looking at a paint job of one today, so we got a couple more coming down the pipeline.
More Harry. One Punch Man anymore?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where we're at with the One Punch.
I really love that figure you did, the One Punch. I mean, the property itself is not one I followed that closely, but I ended up getting that figure, and I thought it was a really good figure. So.
Yeah. So I'll have to check. On that one because again, the difficulty at times of doing license, and we've done plenty of them where you do like one main character, maybe two, is that they get lost on the page sometimes. Right? They don't really get their prominence, which is why it's always nicer to have a series of toys. So years ago when we were doing things like Movie Maniac or Dragons or Spawn, there was always like 5 or 6 so that you get 2 pegs and at least there'd be some semblance of order. And we found that years ago when we did our musicians, we were doing the music people. That doing them as one-offs, although they were super popular singers, musicians, performers, that one figure was hard to find if you went to like Hot Topics or KB Toys or whatever, Babbage's or whatever, like, because it's just one figure on a peg someplace, and it's not like there's 6 other music figures to box it around to give it a presence. And so that's sort of the downside of having a property that only has 1 or 2 figures, right? Our solution at times in the past has been like what we did with something like Movie Maniac, which is I just knew that we couldn't do all these sort of cool, characters one at a time. So we go, well, let's just do 4 or 5 in a series so that they will get the proper space so that it feels like something's there, and then just let the consumer pick it up. So, and his retail has continued to evolve, literally since the beginning of when we started. Because when I started, just to go back, when I started, which doesn't seem like it was that long, but I guess 25 years, Kmart, or excuse me, Toys R Us was the #1 toy buyer, right? I mean,
right.
Well, Walmart was very soon to come and crush them, but at that point, if you got an order from Toys R Us, that was like, oh my gosh, right? That was the home run, and then everything else sort of trickled down below that. So now, you have these evolutions where your Kmart's and your Babbage's and your KB Toys and your Virgin Records and these places we used to, Suncoast, where we used to sell lots and lots of these toys. They've either amalgamated or just disappeared off the face of the earth. And then you've got a consolidation of stores, and then sometimes they get a little bit conservative depending on how their stocks are doing or how the economy's doing. And then you got this thing coming up that did great called the internet that now is sort of a great equalizer. And all of that now keeps evolving, and you have to be able to just move on the fly. So I'm not trying to be coy to some of your answers. The reality of it is that sometimes things are moving so quickly that you don't really even know, like 6 months down the line, at least in the model that I've built for my company, we don't really know 6 months down the line where the marketplace is shifting. And so we just sort of go to where the shift goes and find the spaces that work for us and the collector.
Do you find you have a hard time convincing a Walmart and a Target? Like, obviously Spin Master is really doing more of the stuff that's going to sell to the kids, which from my understanding is usually when you're dealing with the big box retailers, they're barely even acknowledging the adult action figure collector. They're focused on the kids. So now you've got this subline of DC stuff that you're trying to get on the shelves of Target and Walmart along with the Spin Master stuff. do you find it hard to convince those big box retailers that they should be carrying your product because it's made really more for the adult collector and not for the younger kids? Or it has these retailers evolved enough in their understanding of the market to acknowledge that there's potential for sales with the adult action figure collector?
Yeah, I think they understand how big geekdom is, and they've seen the success. I mean, there are a lot of weeks where, you know, Marvel Legends toys are the #1 selling toy, and you can argue that those are not going into the hands of 6-year-olds exclusively. That there's a lot of collectors obviously that are buying those, so they recognize that done right with the right brand at the right price, that you can actually service both of them. And there's the balance. Going back to your, how do you do, like, why is Marvel Legends doing so well? For me, I think it's fairly obvious. You know, they've got these big movies with these big characters that appeal to both an older audience and a younger audience. And they look at it, and then they put out a product that is a fair value. And so they, you know, I can see a mom saying, hey, I'm going to buy that Spider-Man or whatever it is, Captain America, for my kid. And then a collector coming in, you or I, going, oh my God, if it's a good sculpt, or if it's one of our favorite characters, oh my God, we're going to buy it too. So I think there is a way to have your cake and eat it too. I think the further away you go from some of the name characters, then I think that's where you get in trouble. I don't think there's an accident when you see toys backed up that it's like, who ever like wants to buy a J. Jonah Jameson, right? A Commissioner Gordon, like, I don't know. I mean, it's like these are old men in a shirt and pants and a jacket. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I used to say the same thing when Indiana Jones toys came out, right? Who wants to buy, like, what 8-year-old kid wants to buy Harrison Ford now in the new Indiana Jones movie that's a old man in the 60s wearing khaki pants and a vest? Like, it doesn't look good, right? It doesn't look good, right? You're better off coming home bringing Ben 10 to your kid, right? Because at least it looks like a toy, right?
All right, last question. I couldn't let you go without asking a Spawn question. You've got the movie, which if you want to give us an update on that, we'd love to hear it. But one of the big questions is, are we going to see articulated, you know, with your new articulation that you've been doing with your figures, are we going to see that with Spawn, and, you know, maybe even like a Batman Spawn crossover release or something now that you have the DC license? You know, anything you can tease for the Spawn fans out there?
Yeah, so let's take them in reverse order. So, will there be more Spawn toys coming out this year? Definitely. So the answer is yes. Will they be a little more articulated than what they've been in the past? Yes, because people, we're just going to apply probably the same things, like I said, that we're doing with the DC Multiverse and with you know,
Fortnite.
Yeah, Fortnite, and even to some extent what we were doing with Mortal Kombat. So, you know, it'll be in that range, and we'll have some fun with it, and keep sort of teasing some of that stuff out there. In terms of the movie, when I was at New York Comic Con, I was up on stage, and this movie was coming out that weekend called Joker, and I was up on stage saying, "Hey, everybody, if you want to do me a favor, go watch this Joker movie, because the better that movie does, the better chance I have of selling my R-rated movie that I keep saying will work to Hollywood." I've been saying it for 1.5 years, 2 years, right? I mean, I've just been screaming it, saying I think R-rated serious comic book movies will work. They didn't want to take my word for it because I'm an outsider. Like, Todd, who are you? Right? But then this thing came along called Joker. Not only did it open up, but it went on to historic numbers, right? It broke the record for the most money grossed globally for an R-rated movie in cinema, not superhero. Make sure that you heard what I just said. R-rated movie, period, ever. And that number was like about 740 million, which was Deadpool. And Joker currently is over $1 billion. So it took the record and it beat it by 33%, right? And it became this, there's nobody in Hollywood that can tell me with a straight face that they had any idea that this thing would even do half of what the business is that it did. So the reason I bring that up is because it was such a global success. It was such a giant cash cow. Because again, there wasn't a lot of special effects in it, if anybody's seen the movie. And so it was made at a real sort of decent budget relative to the superhero stuff. And yet it still made $1 billion, which means I keep saying to Hollywood that like there's this hunger for comic book movies that's out there. And I've been saying that I think the audience, because you've been doing these movies now for over 10 years, that even if they were 7, they're 17, they can go into R-rated movies now, right? I mean, what are you talking about? And if Avengers can make $3 billion, then I think probably half that audience was 17 or up. So arguably, is there a chance that an R-rated movie can make $1.5 billion? Well, the Joker just showed that the answer is possible because they're past $1 billion, right? I mean, I know they laughed when I said this, and they're going, Todd, there's no proof that that's true. Well, now there's proof. And so what that means is, has my phone been ringing almost nonstop because of the Joker? Yeah. So do they say that? No. But Hollywood's very good. As soon as one thing works, then they got to do more of it, right? I was just talking to somebody last week in my office saying the meetings I'm having, the conversations I'm having have a different tone to them, right? There, some of the meetings I could tell when I left, it was like, hey, don't call us, we'll call you, right? But these are now they're different conversations. They're chasing me instead of me chasing them, trying to convince them that R-rated movies will work. They're now coming the other way. So I mean that there are now a handful of serious contenders that are going, Todd, what we got to do? What we got to do? What we got to do? So the reality of it is, for me, I'm scheduled this week to fly out and meet another Academy nominated talented person that they have done some pre-conversation with, that is excited about talking to me about jumping on the project. I think that this person will be the linchpin. That they'll go, oh my God, he's got this will be his 5th Academy person that is saying that they want to be part of this project at a reasonable price. And the only thing that's weak in the presentation is Todd's inexperience at directing. But he keeps putting this team around him that are very, 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 very skilled. And why wouldn't he continue to do that with his director of photography and his editor and the people who do the music and everything else, which I will. So that's just a long-winded way of saying that, for the first time in a while, that there's genuine momentum back on the project. And at some point, if we do get it off the ground, we go into production and we ever get it made, and there's any kind of success, I'm going to have to go and write a personal letter to both, Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix and some of the other people on Joker, and say, hey, thanks for basically
paving the way.
Well, just giving them the data. I mean, I knew it would work. I knew R-rated movies would work, but they crushed it so big that it was like, thank you. You've carved so that these people are now hungry for more, and that allows me now to not have to continue to sort of keep begging for it, that they're asking for it. And that's a huge shift. That's a huge shift in this project.
How about as a thank you, you do a Todd Phillips Joker figure?
Oh my God! We were talking about it today. He wanted some the Golden Globe. They won a couple. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I keep asking. We're like, I'm gonna keep asking until they eventually get wore out and go, fine, you can do one, Todd. So I think it would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I think a Spawn movie, done right, would be very successful at the box office. So hopefully we will be hearing even more news on that front very soon.
Yeah, hopefully, if this meeting goes good this week, hopefully then maybe within a month, 2 months, should be able to make another announcement of the next step, right? Because each time we make an announcement, the news travels pretty far and strong. And it's been a little bit of a while, but I think that this next piece will be the one that hopefully gets it sort of over the finish line.
I look forward to hearing that news when it comes out. Well, I want to thank you for taking all this time, a lot more time than I thought we were going to be get. So I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to us about all this stuff.
Sure, thanks for having me.
And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the new DC figures. So, and more great things coming from you guys.
Like I said, the thing I'm most excited about with the DC Multiverse licenses is that I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do, what I can do, what they'll let me do, what's coming down the pipeline from DC. There's a lot of excitement that's still there that if people like what we've done, I'm here to say that it's only going to get better. I believe that with every fiber.
Yeah, I think DC fans are hungry. I mean, it's, not to put down anything previous companies done, but I think there's definitely potential there to, invigorate the DC fan base with new action figures. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys have.
Okay, so that's it. Again, I just want to thank Mr. McFarlane for sitting down with us and spending so much time today talking with us. I was really only expecting about 15 minutes and we got over an hour. So again, I really appreciate that. I hope you guys all enjoyed the interview. I know it was a long one, but I thought there was a lot of good tidbits of information that came out of the interview. So I would love to hear your thoughts on everything that was talked about in the interview. What do you think? What are you looking forward to? What kind of input do you have for Todd McFarlane and McFarlane Toys with all their various action figure lines? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you like this kind of video, even though it's kind of long, let me know also. And I will see about doing more videos like this in the future. Until next time, hit the subscribe button, follow me here, hit the bell notification so you're alerted every time I upload a new video, and I will catch you later.
Hey, thanks for watching today's video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so you're alerted every time I upload a new video. And be sure to head over to the Toy News International and Marvelous News message boards communities. It's a great place to talk toys and win cool contests like $100 store credits to Big Bad Toy Store. And remember, action figures are great.